Hey top percenters, let's talk about the diversity of the format. Now, this is just going to be me airing a thought, and I don't want anyone to come away from this thinking that I'm moaning or complaining about the state of the game, because that's not my intention. I'm not here to complain, and quite frankly, I don't think you guys want to hear me moan about the game we all love. So what started me thinking about how diverse the format is? Well, it's the fact that for the first time in at least 5 seasons, I've not heard anyone complain that the format's bland or lacking in diversity. And after noticing this, I started to wonder, what's different this season? Now, my answer for this is twofold, and depends on how you want to look at the format. From the standpoint of, do decks in the format change, then the format seems to be pretty well rounded. We tend to get a new big deck with every new set. Dark Explorers gave us Darkrai and Friends, Boundaries Cross gave us Blastoise, Dragons Exalted gave us Ray Eels, Plasma Freeze gave us Deoxys Thundurus and Kyurem, and Plasma Blast gave us Jet Set Virizion. So right there, that's 5 new decks in 6 sets, each with its own playstyle. And yeah, you could say that the format is pretty diverse. Heck, I didn't even mention the evolutions from last episode, or Tool Drop, but there is one thing that these decks have in common, and it leads to my second standpoint for whether the format is diverse. Even though all of these decks have different playstyles, they all do the same thing overall. They deal high damage. And this is where you can find the big difference in what people call diverse. Is diversity having a lot of decks to play, or is diversity having a number of ways you can achieve a win? Now, to be blunt, both of these statements are true, but for different reasons. But for me, diversity is defined by the ways you can win, and by being rewarded for being at least a little imaginative. I think the best way to put this into context is by stepping back into the pre-X format. Back then we had decks like Chandelier and Vanillux, and before them we had Gothitelle. Now, these decks had 2 things in common. Firstly, they specialised on train lock, and secondly, they won by setting up. They were set-up decks. If Gothitelle didn't establish its setup, it lost. If Vanillux didn't get set up before its opponent took 4 prizes, it lost. Does that mean that these decks are bad? No, they were amazing decks. The fact that they had to set up to win in my eyes is what balanced them. Vanillux being able to lock trainers and paralyse my opponent turn 1 without any real setup would be incredibly unbalanced and completely unfair. Gothitelle being able to tank and lock trainers without needing to set up another stage 2 behind it would be unfair. Setup decks rewarded you for managing your resources well, for knowing when to invest cards onto the board and when to hold back. And most importantly, they could fail. Any game where you need to evolve to stage 2 at least twice can easily fail, which makes it much more satisfying when you do manage to set up and you do manage to eke out that win. But coming back to our current format, there is no real setup, and even though every deck has its own playstyle, the tactics behind each deck are the same: accelerate energy and deliver damage. Now, I'm not saying that's bad. In fact, it's not really a problem, it's just the state of the game. The only downside to this is purely the fact that I feel the game has become a lot more like chess at the moment, and that's not me saying the format doesn't require skill. Far from it. Chess is one of the most mentally driven games in the world. The problem I have with it is the fact that this is Pokemon, a multifaceted game. I want the game to be multifaceted, where each deck provides its own unique matchup, instead of the same matchup with a different flavour. I mean, if I want to play chess, then I'll play chess. If I want a unique and varied experience, I'd like to think that Pokemon is the place to go. But there is one more thing I'd like to talk about before covering some more news, and that's why is no one complaining about a bland format when I can form my chess opinion. I personally believe that it's because of the chess format that people aren't complaining. In all of the formats where people have complained, there have been setup decks and standard attack deck. Already that sounds more diverse than the chess format, but it has 2 very distinct styles of deck, and because people can see these 2 types, they think there's only 2. Whereas there's 1 deck type now with nothing to compare it to, and because there's no distinction in deck type, there's no realisation that the format's bland from a tactical standpoint. Now that my rambling's done, let's take a look at the latest news about X and Y. The biggest news to hit has been the new evolution for Honedge. It can now evolve into Doublade, a steel ghost Pokemon with the ability No Guard, and it basically has done a Magneton, having 2 Honedges fuse. That being said, overall I like the design, although I find the colour change to be slightly odd. One theory is that the Doublade we've seen is female and the Honedge is male, but we'll have to wait and see. 2 weeks now. We also have news of the Xerneas and Yveltal half decks that are going to be released in Japan on January the 31st. As well as the cover cards, the Xerneas half deck will feature a Holo Clefairy, whereas we will see a Holo Pancham in the Evital half deck. We've also been informed that X Collection and Y Collection will have a total of 120 cards between them, 11 of which will be Fairy type Pokemon. And that's all for today. What do you guys think about the format? Do you think it's diverse? Please leave your well-informed opinions below, and until next time, I'm Rata Joey. You guys are top percent. Laters.